I hope everybody's doing well this evening. Anyway, live broadcast tonight is going to be about the tariff wars we're having, the devaluation of the dollar, and the hidden truth behind it, and how it's all connected. That's what we're going to discuss on the live tonight. But I'm going to wait a few minutes for people to start showing up. So, yeah, I'd love to do a live broadcast outside. But I tell you what, this wind hasn't stopped blowing here now for at least 4 weeks. It's crazy. And today it's a cold south wind and stuff. That always means they're not having very nice weather somewhere else east of us. That's what it usually means. But, this wind, the dogs don't even want to be outside anymore in it. They about had it with it too. I mean, you sit there and you just get sandblasted. Literally sandblasted. That's why a lot of the houses here are steckel and stuff, because that type of siding can take it. My house, it's got siding on it, and the west side and stuff, it's just getting sandblasted, pulling the paint off and stuff. So, guess if you need your car painted, you need the paint cleaned off real good. Just have to set it out in the wind here for a while, and I'll take care of it anyway. But I do hope everybody's having a great evening. We're going to get into the subject, but first, I like to say YouTube's really hammering down on this channel bad. So, any help this channel can get and growing, and I don't mean financially. I'm not going to on here asking for money or nothing like that. I'm not going to do that on the channel, but like and subscribe and share the content if you like it. That I'd appreciate, like I say. And hit that share button. Let's get the word out. I made 4 shorts today, and YouTube won't even put them on the feed. So that's one thing. Go to my shorts. I do my thought of the day, the truth of the day, the question of the day, and see if it makes you angry or whatever. But anyway, YouTube don't like playing them. But let's get into the subject, the tariff wars. And the reason I want to bring up this subject today is because I heard what Amazon was going to do and put what the price, how much more expensive the item is because of the tariffs, okay? Let's get into the real reason why we're having these tariff wars, okay? Number one, okay, we went from a manufacturing-based economy to a consumer-based economy. I mean, our steel industry in Pittsburgh, look what happened there. Now Detroit and stuff. But what I mean by that is we went from making stuff, and somebody'd go to work and he would get a paycheck and he would spend money on American-made stuff. Our money in this country was made on Americans making money, not Americans spending money. Okay, and then we're spending it on stuff that's not even made here. But they got together in the 80s and 90s. Hi, how's everybody doing? Hello, Debbie. They all got together, the politicians and the big business and stuff. And, when all these, like China and Vietnam and India and all these countries were starting to industrialize and they had cheaper labor. So what goes on? Well, I'm talking about the tariff wars. Okay, so they shipped all our manufacturing jobs, a lot of them over there, with textiles, making clothing and making furniture. And then it just grew from there, okay? And we shipped all our jobs out. So we become an economy where our money's making our money, basically. And we do have still the blue-collar workers, but that's not the main force behind how this country makes its dollars. It's by people spending money. So what happens then? All of a sudden, debt starts booming, right? I remember hearing about all this debt in the 70s and 80s. I know people still have credit cards and stuff, but all this debt started booming. Okay, as a consumer society, in order for that to exist, instead of having people going to jobs making money, you got to have people spending money, no matter how they can get their money. Okay, but they need to be spending money in a consumer society. Well, when everybody's going broke and everybody's in debt and our government's in debt, and now debt is an asset. That's the way they think of it and stuff. But see, you get the point. We can't afford to live in this consumer society anymore. Biden or Trump. I'll tell you what, when it comes to that, I don't understand how the Democratic Party, as big as it is, can only find a person like Joe Biden to run for president. And I don't understand how the Republican Party, as big as it is, they can only find Donald Trump to run for president. Okay? That's my thing. That's the best we got to choose from. So you can support whoever you want. I don't follow any banner. I'm an American. I stand up for all Americans, no matter. When I was in the Marine Corps, you think I cared whether you were a Democrat or Republican? It doesn't. I grew up in an age where that didn't matter. Okay, so I don't even want to get into who I go for. I'll vote for George Washington when he gets to run again. Okay, that's the man I want again. But anyway, where was I at? I know I got distracted by that. But people are broke. People have been borrowing money, going in debt. I mean, our government debt is unreal. Will never be paid back. Never. A lot of other people's debt. The average household is what? I heard almost $100,000 in debt. That's crazy, Tom. I can't even imagine that. I have no debt, so I got my cell phone and my car insurance payment. And the only reason I got a car insurance payment is because the government requires us to have insurance. Even though the government's not able to tell us how to spend our money. By the way, so we ship all our jobs away. We're going broke, and we can't afford to live this way no more. And Trump knows this. So what he's trying to do is convince people. I don't agree with a lot of things he does, especially what comes out of his mouth lately sometimes. But he's trying to convince American businesses, and not only financially, but if we all go to war, it's going to be safer for American businesses to be in this country. But he's trying to convince these businesses, hey, come back here, American made. There ain't going to be no tariffs on you. And these other countries they don't want these, China don't want these American factories to leave their country. They can't afford that either. I mean, Xi Jinping's got to make 1.5 billion people happy every day, or, he could lose power. Could you imagine that? But these other countries don't want to give it up. And they say Taiwan moving these factories, or moving their factories to not moving them, but building new factories to build semiconductors here in the United States. Well, no kidding. Because they realize in not too short a time, they're not going to own those factories in Taiwan anymore. So it's best to start up new ones in the United States. China's going to take them over. But, we shipped all our jobs out. I mean, remember, if you're an older person, you grew up in a town of like 2,000 people. You may have had 2 factories in that town. I grew up in a town with a little over 2,000 people. We had a big brick factory, which was the last factory in the United States to actually make clay bricks. And they made other blocks too and stuff. And we had a manufacturing company that built air compressors. And then the local farmers and stuff in our town thrived from that. Because all the money went back into the town. Okay, the people that owned both factories, I had kids in my class that were families of both of those families. But the money was all local. Okay? The banks, all the money was local and stuff. It wasn't all this. stuff we got now. And that's what we don't have in this country. Like, ask Pittsburgh. What's happening there? What's happening to Detroit? You know, they lost their industry. We shipped it overseas. It was easier and more, somebody could make an extra nickel by screwing America. And we wonder why there's tariff wars. Because we need to bring our manufacturing back. And these other countries don't want to let it go. And there's no reason why our cost of living, and I'm going to get into that, the value of the dollar, why our cost of living is the way it is. But there's no reason why I have to compete with somebody whose living expenses is 10% of mine. So somebody who's making 10,000% more than me a year is making a bigger profit. Okay, I don't see your loyalty in your country doing that. When is enough money and enough? Okay. But anyway, tariff wars, welcome to it. It's either going to make us or break us. And anybody in America thinks that we can survive being a consumer-based economy and don't have to go back to actually manufacturing and, the local guy making his money locally, where we're based on people making money, not on people spending money. We get back to that. Then we'll have started figuring out how to solve the problem. But just amazing. We didn't have these problems in this country when small towns like ours had manufacturing and people had work. And they, all these baby boomers now that got to live through that and make their money through that are enjoying that and stuff. Especially in these small towns where it doesn't cost a lot to live. And that's very important these days, because now we'll get on to the other subject, which is the value of the dollar. I made a short on that too. YouTube is not liking that. Comparing the value of the dollar to your gas gauge in your car. It's a good short. You should go watch it. But anyway, yeah, how much has the value of the dollar decreased since the Federal Reserve was created by the Woodrow Wilson administration? I think it was 1913. It's a whole nother video for that, because the Democrats did a lot of shenanigans to get all this Social Security, the Federal Reserve, and all that stuff through. But, the first true progressive president, you might say. But how much has the dollar lost its value? Over 98%. 98% of its buying power since the Federal Reserve took over. A bunch of private bankers. That's another thing. A private banker, do you think he's actually interested in what America needs, or he's looking at his bottom line, what he needs? By the way, they devalued our dollar so much that the cost of living is crazy. It's gotten worse. The older I've gotten, and I've lived it, it gets harder and harder to make ends meet. Everything keeps going up. And, the thing is, I understand money, okay? And I know the answer is not paying us more money. That just starts snowballing down the road, because you give me more money, they're just going to start charging more, because they say, oh, he can afford to pay more money. We need to start getting costs down. I mean, our government just goes into debt. Just keeps borrowing more money, or nowadays nobody will really buy our debt, so we just poof. There's more money to spend. Holy cow, where'd that come from? Just making the money in our wallet worthless and more worthless and more worthless. And the inflation, that's just another, the tariffs are saying that's raising costs. That's just, they're trying to hide the truth. The Federal Reserve and inflation and stuff. Inflation just because they're printing too much money. What was one reason for our inflation that they never brought up? all those stimulus checks they sent out. That was part of the reason for inflation. Okay? Another, what's another thing for inflation the government spending money on that they did have that just created out of nowhere? Oh, I don't know, stuff dealing with people coming out from the southern and northern border that aren't supposed to be here. I mean, all this government expenses. When the government, see, this is another thing. When the government goes back to, we can't spend any more than we take in, and then we're paying this off. We need to cut. Anytime government grows, the dollar's going to decrease in value, inflation's going to go up, cost of living is going to go up, and everything else. You bring down the size of government, you'll start controlling that. We actually let capitalist principles decide on how the market goes instead of government policy. There's no reason the stock market should go up or down or any type of finances because the government passes a law or whatever. That just means that we got too much business in our government, especially writing the laws. I mean, I'm sure the lawyers that are writing the law for the congressmen are sitting right next to the lawyers for the big rich guy lobbyists that gave the money to get this law passed. Oh, that would never go on, Tom. Never. Anyway, these tariffs, it's either going to work or you think prices are high now. They're going to get even worse. I just don't understand why this country has to ship anything in. Like a prepper being self-sufficient can survive on his own, a country needs to be the same way. It needs to be in a position where it can cut off all ties from the world if it has to and be self-sufficient, like we used to be. But after World War II, they had to tie all the economies together. We'll never have another World War if we tie all the economies together and everybody's, money's connected. Nobody's going to go to war. And now they just use money to control other countries. Anyway, I guess this is going to be a short live stream. YouTube's, I guess not. How thin-skinned you got to be when somebody like me can sit here on YouTube and make them shake in their shoes. I mean, Jeff Bezos is just running his businesses into the ground because of his political beliefs. And like I say, if you run your business with your political beliefs, you're basically a politician. So expect to get treated the same, okay? And whatever. But Amazon, yeah, I do believe it wouldn't be a bad thing to put the price increase and put tariffs and say, yeah, if we had manufacturing in this country, we wouldn't be doing this. And you're paying so much more because the Federal Reserve and dollars worth garbage. I mean, if we're going to sit there and blame Trump, we got to blame every administration since Woodrow Wilson's because they've all taken advantage of it. Okay? And the first time it backfired on them, when would have that been? Oh, yeah, October 1929. And then that was a lesson to them. And ever since then, they've used different economic theory to make sure that don't happen again. Like I say, if you don't think we're in a depression, if soup lines and stuff are the sign of a depression, let's get rid of EBT and the welfare system. And let's see how long the soup kitchen lines are. Just a thought. Everybody have a great night. This is Tom. I'm out.